Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Maoist Third Worldist Collective. You know, sometimes I think I'm being a little bit too sarcastic, but only sometimes. I was watching a part of a program, not the entire thing, on the David Pakman show on YouTube, and somebody made a comment. Why do people always refer to President Biden as Mr. Biden? And I couldn't resist. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I said, yeah, I agree. We should just call him the war criminal. Um, should I feel guilty? Maybe. Do I feel guilty? No, I don't feel guilty. Um, Certainly, I think Biden should be regarded as a war criminal, along with Netanyahu and along with all of those people who may support the activities of Israel in Gaza, the literal destruction of Gaza, forcing the Gazans into Egypt, perhaps Jordan, even though they've said no, or even the sea. And the sad thing is that a majority of Israelis agree. A majority, a large majority of Israelis agree with Netanyahu and the Netanyahu government. Sometimes I think, where are these people from? Are they from the same planet that I'm from? Are they from the same Jewish heritage, ancestry that I am from? I guess so. I guess so. I guess they are. There is a family friend, and I won't say how she's a family friend because I don't want to tip off who this individual is or expose this individual to any possible harm. But this individual and her entire family supports what Netanyahu is doing in Gaza. She even has a couple of members of her family who are not Israeli citizens. They are American citizens, and yet they are working for the IDF. Now, is that in itself unusual? No. I mean, the US military allows people who are not US citizens to serve in the US military. So you can't fault Israel for allowing non-Israelis to serve in the Israeli military either. That's not my problem. My problem is, why do most Israelis support the policies of the Israeli regime? Why do they agree with Netanyahu in spite of Netanyahu's dropping poll numbers? Well, his dropping poll numbers have nothing to do with his war on Gaza. They are purely personal. Netanyahu has become a relatively unpopular politician in Israel for a variety of reasons. He's not very well liked by a lot of people, by a lot of Israelis. But the war he is waging, which is not really even entirely his war, it is a war that is supported by people on his right flank, perhaps even more than by him. And if Netanyahu were to give up the war against Gaza, then Netanyahu might very well, and I think we can predict with a fair degree of certainty, would almost invariably lose his position as prime minister. The third time he has served in that job. That is a record. That is a record. That a man like Benjamin Netanyahu would be serving in the Israeli military for the third time. Not military, prime ministership. In charge of the Israeli military. It is a real tragedy. I don't know what to make of it. I see pictures of the tragedies going on in Gaza. I can't imagine that Israelis are not seeing the same pictures, but obviously they're not seeing them the same way as I am. Obviously, they're not seeing them through the same eyes that I am seeing them through. Something is obviously wrong, I think, with either them or with myself. And I don't think there's anything wrong with myself. Now, are there things wrong with myself in other respects? Sure. I'm an imperfect man. We are all imperfect beings. We are all imperfect beings. But in terms of my attitude toward the Gazans as members of the third world, questioning the legitimacy, the legality of the Israeli war on Gaza is not something I ever do. I never question the illegality of it. Why? Because it is illegal. It's not just one war crime. It is one war crime after another. And the same man, Benjamin, aka Bibi Netanyahu, is in charge of the government that is committing those war crimes. Now, despite the fact that there are parties to his right that may even be worse warmongers than Bibi Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu is the one who is in charge of the war. He is giving the directions. He has admitted his objective is to eliminate all Gazans from Gaza. Why? Because he and apparently a lot of other Israelis want that area for themselves. And so he is saying now that he is fighting a 7-front war. And don't ask me to name what those 7 fronts are, because I literally don't remember. They include Iran and Gaza and Hezbollah and Syria and Iran and a few other places. It is a total tragedy, and one which never should have happened. Why did it happen? It happened because the Gazans are being kept prisoners in Gaza. It happened because most Muslim countries, predominantly Muslim countries, not only Arab, but also Persian-speaking, Iran, do not want them. They don't want the Palestinians, generally. Do I know why? No, I don't know why. I'm not from there. So it's hard for me to conceive of why people would not want people who speak the same language as most of them do, with the exception of Iran, although there is a sizable Arabic-speaking population in Iran as well, mostly in the northern part of Iran. But why they would not want those people in their countries is a complete mystery to me. I can't figure it out. It literally makes no sense to me. If any of you watching this podcast can figure it out or have figured it out, please either make a response video to mine or write a comment below the video explaining to me, because I am apparently an ignoramus, that I cannot figure out why those other countries do not want fellow Arabs, Palestinians in their countries. I don't understand it. I mean, Iran supports Hezbollah. Hezbollah is basically a Shia organization. Hamas is basically a Sunni organization. So you have Iran and you have Syria, both of which are predominantly Shia, although, as I have said before, different forms of Shia, but they both get along. They are allied with one another. Why don't they invite the people who are now being run by Hezbollah into their countries? Again, I don't understand it. Maybe I am simply stupid. Maybe I am. I am obviously missing something. Now, I know in the part of the world where I live, the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas, just south of us, we have Mexico, 2 miles to the south of me personally. A lot of the people in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas only speak Spanish. The majority of people in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, even if they speak Spanish, also speak English. And yet, the people who live in this area of deep South Texas are extremely strong supporters of Border Patrol. And most Border Patrol agents are also Mexican American. Again, does that make any sense to me? No. And I don't want it to make sense to me. I feel as though if it did make sense to me, I would literally be losing a part of my humanity. I would stop being a human being. So, now, most Americans are not primarily Spanish speaking. So, despite the fact that this area is an exception because we are right along the Mexican border, I can understand why, at least theoretically, the US government does not want all of these Mexicans streaming into the United States. I mean, it would be an economic hardship. It would be a similar situation to what happened in West Germany when the East Germans were finally allowed to migrate to West Germany, when they climbed over the Berlin Wall and were not shot at by security guards. At first, the West German government tried to encourage the East Germans to remain in East Germany and to establish a democratic republic, what is called a democratic republic in East Germany. I knew from the very beginning that was not going to happen. I think most Americans did. I think most Germans most likely did as well. So the East Germans came in, and pretty soon it didn't really matter whether you were in East Germany or West Germany. Why? Because it was now simply Germany. Now, the eastern side of Germany was considerably poorer than the western side, but still, it was all the same country. And it made sense that Germans would want to unite with other Germans. That's logical. My own personal views are not important. That was a logical thing to happen. It was a purely artificial separation caused by politics. I would argue caused mostly by the West, caused mostly by NATO, because NATO is the alliance that did not want to establish a relationship with Stalin. Stalin wanted to establish an alliance. It was the West that turned him down. So I would blame that problem on the US and other Western countries, not on the former Soviet Union, which was open to some type of relationship, whatever it would have been, collaborative or whatever. Obviously, during World War II, the Soviet Union was a part of the Allied powers, which fought and defeated Germany, Italy, and Japan. But the Soviet Union speaks different languages. Russian in Russia, but different languages in other parts of the former Soviet Union. So I can understand to an extent why there was some hesitation on the part of the West from a purely linguistic standpoint to unite with the Soviet Union. But why in the world? Why in the world are Arabs opposed to other Arabs who just happen to be, from the accident of history, Palestinians? Why are they not welcomed in those Arab countries? Maybe if one or more of you understands it, again, you can enlighten me, because it makes no sense to me at all. I wish it did. For all sorts of reasons. I spoke with a friend of mine on the phone about an hour ago. I asked her if she is keeping up with the news connected with the war on Hamas, on Gaza, by Israel. And she said no, that she finds it to be too depressing. And I said, yeah, I can understand. It is depressing. But I feel it's my moral duty as somebody from a Jewish family, Jewish ancestry, Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry, to be aware of what is happening in that part of the world. She's not. That is not her background. So the fact that she wants to stay away from it is perfectly understandable. I can understand that. I want to stay away from it. I do. It is not fun watching these stories day in and day out about Israelis slaughtering Gazans. It's not fun. It is terrifying. It is tragic. It is pure malevolence. And yet that is the world that we are living in. I've heard speculations on whether we might actually now be either in World War III or on the threshold of World War III. I can tell you my own view, and there's every chance that I am wrong, but I'll say it anyway. I think that the threshold of World War III was 9/11. That opened the floodgates. That led to the war in Afghanistan, which in turn led to the war in Iraq. That started the confrontation of the West with that part of the world. Now, I think we are seeing a further escalation in those same wars from the same general part of the world, not precisely, but close enough. I mean, technically, Iraq and Afghanistan are not in the Near East, but they're right near it. They're certainly a lot closer to it than I am. And so the things that are happening there now, the tragedies that are happening there now, the killings, the slaughterings, the dehumanizations that are happening in that part of the world right now are all perfectly understandable. And that is sad to me. Again, as somebody coming from an Ashkenazi Jewish background, looking at all of these horrendous events occurring in the Near East breaks my heart. And even that term is not sufficient. It's not. It's more than breaks my heart. It destroys my heart. It destroys my soul. It demolishes my character and my being. I feel like my being is being consumed with these events that are occurring in that part of the world. And so then I am forced to return to the President of the United States, Joe Biden, who has openly referred to himself as a Zionist once again publicly. And I recall vividly the first time he did it a few decades in the past, and that he supports what is going on there. Maybe not all of it. I don't know. I can't get inside his head. But whether he supports it or not doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. What matters is that whatever his views are on what Israel is doing in Gaza, Biden is continuing to send money and weapons to Israel to be used on Gaza, to be used on Lebanon, and who knows what else. We could be on the verge again of a third world war. I think it is creeping up upon us. And Biden and Netanyahu are the primary agents facilitating it. And so, what will happen in the course of the next few days or months? I don't know. I have no idea. Do I even want to? Not really. Not really, because I feel as if I knew, that would be an even greater burden, and my knowing would not change anything at all. I have no ability to fix it. I can't go and knock on Joe Biden's door and demand that he stop doing what he's doing. I wouldn't get past security, the Secret Service. Nor would I want to. I have no desire to tell Joe Biden what to do, because I know that he would simply ignore me. My pleas would be left unheard. And maybe they should be. I don't know. What I do know is that whatever is happening in the world right now, we are seeing the destruction of a civilization, the civilization of the first world. I think that term should replace Western civilization. Why? Because Israel is not in the West, and yet it is a part of the first world. Japan is not in the West. South Korea is not in the West. Australia and New Zealand are not in the West, and yet they are a part of the first world as well. So I prefer the term first world civilization to Western civilization. And I see that first world civilization imploding right before my eyes. And I don't know who any of you are who are watching me, but my guess is that you probably do too. If you think about it, where is there left to go? I don't know. I have no idea. Israel, with its 7 fronts, including Gaza, literally engaged in a process of world destruction. Well, if that isn't the Third World War, then what is? 7 fronts. 7 fronts. That sounds like a world war to me. I would encourage you to leave your comments below this podcast, directly below the video. And again, if you are so inclined to make a response podcast and link it below the video as well. And as I always say, I will watch it. And if you like, I will respond to your video as well. If you don't want me to, I won't. It's up to you. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.